Hey Grauwelt fans, today I wanted to do a little bit of a different video and kind of get away from the usual talk about writing and fantasy concepts and talk about something that through my conversations with a lot of you guys, a lot of my subscribers on YouTube and also on the Grauwelt website, I've come to find that I'm in very similar company when it comes to, I think, something that affects a lot of us, and that's being an introvert. And before we get started, I always want to know more about all of you guys out there watching these videos and commenting. So I set up a little poll on the Grauwelt website. That's at grauwelt.com/introvert. It's a poll to rate to see whether you consider yourself an introvert, an extrovert, or maybe somewhere in between. So I'll put the link to that poll in the video description and also in the video itself. Head over to the Grauwelt website and cast your vote, and I'd like to see, I think we'd all be interested to see how many of us kind of like rate ourselves in those different categories. So in this video, I didn't really prepare any notes like an outline I usually have that I have points that I want to discuss. I just kind of wanted to make it more of a straight from the heart sort of thing, and this is something that I've thought about, my entire life, and I'm sure, I know for a fact that a lot of you have, as you've told me. And being an introvert has its many pros and cons. Me personally, I can remember even when I was a child, some of my earliest memories, 3, 4 years old, my parents would always encourage me to go out and play with the other kids outside, and I definitely did that a lot, but I think much more often than a lot of my other peers, my friends around me, I was much more likely to want to be by myself. A lot of kids would call me up on the phone and say, "Hey Vic, you want to come over and play Super Nintendo? You want to play with the new Star Wars or Ninja Turtles toys that I just got?" And I think any 3 or 4-year-old would kind of jump at that prospect, but I think just as often as not, I would be the kind of kid that said, "No, I can't make it." And they would say, "Are you sick? Are you grounded? Did something happen?" I would say, "No, I just don't really feel like it." And it would usually just end at that. But on my side of things, it was sort of this inexplicable desire to always want to be alone. And that feeling has stuck with me throughout my entire life. I don't think it's as bad now as it has been at certain points of my life. Certainly not when I was a teenager is probably the worst. But it's something, that introversion is something that really weighs heavily, I think, on all of us that have that sort of personality type. And it can be really hard to explain to other people. I think maybe, I don't know, I'm just kind of pulling this out of my ass, but maybe, 25% of people are introverts, 25% are extroverts, and then the other 50% are somewhere in between or neither. And for us introverts, it can be really hard to explain exactly why, we have this desire to be alone, why we can't just express ourselves very easily. Coming up, I had just one friend when I was in middle school and high school that was the same way. And, either one of us would have our alone time and, we'd have our together time. And sometimes, I'd say, "Hey man, you want to, come over and hang out? Let's go get something to eat. Let's go to the movies." And he would just say no. And I could just hear it in his voice. And I think he could feel the same thing in mine. When it was just that time, that time every now and then that either one of us needed to be alone. And we just kind of left it at that because we both had talked about it extensively and we both knew exactly what that's like. And for a lot of introverts, that's really hard. I mean, out of all the friends that I've ever met, I have maybe 2 or 3 out of, the hundreds of people that I've ever met that are the same way. And that's the irony of being an introvert, is that you don't meet other introverts because they're not extroverted. They don't get out. They don't meet people. And so I think so many introverts out there, and I know a lot of you have expressed this to me, and I understand 100% that it's hard to meet other people that are like that and can relate to those same sorts of issues. I think there are a lot of misconceptions about what an introvert is. It's usually tied into being depressed, which can certainly be the case. It has been the case in my own past a few times. But that's not always the case. I don't know whether depression leads to introversion or introversion leads to depression or what the link is there. But in my personal case, I mean, there's always just been this sort of need to be alone, a time to contemplate, a time to think, to look at the world from the outside and wonder why everything is the way that it is, and try to come to that understanding that you can't really do that when you're in the middle of talking and dealing with a lot of people. You just kind of have to have time every now and then, and it's different for everybody to just step away and observe things. That's why I think that a lot of introverts end up being, academics, they end up being intellectuals, they end up being writers and artists and poets and musicians, because they spend so much time contemplating things. There's just this deep-seated desire to want to understand, like there's something missing, there's something or someone out there that you're always looking for, And, even if you were to find it, you still would probably be the same way because there's always a broader horizon to try to understand and try to grasp. In my case especially, my introversion, especially when I was very young, was coupled with sort of a depressive nature and also just a kind of fear of rejection. Maybe that kind of ties into it, that you don't want to be judged, so you don't expose yourself to other people. And that gradually disappeared as I got older and I built confidence. And that was one of the things that made me want to become a writer, is to overcome that fear of rejection. When I first started writing when I was in middle school, I would always hide all my stories in notebooks and put them away in my closet or my desk at home and wouldn't show anyone. And when finally people, my friends and family, started reading them, sure, sometimes they laughed and I felt bad and embarrassed. But, I learned something from that. I learned to come out of my shell by dealing with other people. And sure, sometimes the criticism is harsh, but you can really learn something from that you can't learn if you isolate yourself entirely. Before I wrote my very first book that I published last year, The Sword and Its Servant, that was coming out for me. even the day that I decided to start writing the manuscript and the time, I could still remember showing my girlfriend was the first person to read it. I just wanted to hide in a hole and cross my fingers and I just couldn't even describe how I felt, but I knew that I had to do that. Just being introverted to the degree that I couldn't relate to another person, the ideas that I wanted to share with them was kind of self-defeating and destructive in a way. And certainly making these YouTube videos, I get very nervous as I'm making them. I don't know if you can see that in my expression sometimes, and certainly nervous as I put them up. And I just think, what are people going to think about me? I'm out there, you can see me, even though, I edit some of my slip-ups and, do a couple takes sometimes, there's still that possibility that you'll be judged and made fun of, and I've kind of gotten over a lot of that as I've gotten older. So I think on the plus side, being an introvert already gives you the discipline and nature to contemplate. Like I said earlier, introverts, I think, tend to spend more time, alone. They think about problems in their life, they think about problems in the world at large. Me personally, I always like to read. Even when I was a kid, I learned to read very early. I read a lot. I read my parents' books on history and politics and science, and I was always really interested in those things, where my other friends didn't really like reading a lot, and they played a lot of sports. I didn't really get into sports very much. There were many days in the past where it doesn't happen much anymore, but when I had a regular office job, and I was away from work for maybe 2 or 3 days and I lived by myself, there could be, a 2 or 3 day span of time in which I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't have any human interaction at all. I can remember not speaking, a word for 2 or 3 days many times, and I was usually perfectly satisfied with that because I had books to read, I, exercised on my own, I had time to think and draw and write and just do the things that I wanted to do by myself. And that didn't bother me. I know a lot of other people who are more on the extroverted side would want to kill themselves if they couldn't speak to anyone for 2 or 3 days. But, again, all of us are very different in that regard. And so being an introvert kind of gives you the time to hone a different skill set. Now, that's not to say, and I certainly don't believe that introverts are better than extroverts or vice versa. They're just different. They will have different skill sets. Extroverts are obviously very sociable people. They're the negotiators, they're the diplomats, they're the politicians, they're the salespeople. You need both kinds of people, and most people, again, fall, I think, in the middle of those two and kind of have a balance of either one. So it takes all kinds to really make the world go round. There's not a right or wrong way to do it. I can only speak from my personal experience as what I would describe chiefly as an introvert, and I don't think that's ever going to go away, and I don't think that I ever would want to have that go away if I had a choice. I know a lot of people out there that are introverted kind of curse that fact, they rue it, they think something's wrong with them, and what I would say to those people, and certainly I thought that at one time, what I would say to those people, to you out there who are introverts and you struggle with making friends, you struggle with who you are, you don't feel comfortable, you feel that there's something missing from your personality, I would say you should embrace the God-given talents, the gifts that you have, because you have that discipline to be quiet and contemplative and studious, and that can work to your advantage. So to all the introverts out there who struggle with that sort of thing, just realize that you have innate advantages that you can use to better yourself, and it's okay that you're different. It's actually not just okay that you're different, it's absolutely necessary for the progress of human society. I mean, if we were all the same, we wouldn't get anywhere. It's because of those differences in dispositions and personalities that we have any advancement at all, and I would say thank the gods that we're not all the same. I'd like to remind everyone once again to visit the Grauwelt website at grauwelt.com/introvert. I'll put the link in the video description and also in the video itself. We have a poll set up there for everyone that's watching to rate themselves. Do you think you're an introvert? Do you think you're an extrovert, or maybe kind of in between or neither? I'd be very interested to see what everyone out there is. The people who have come to me to talk to me about this, I don't know if there's something about the way I present myself on YouTube probably that makes me look like an introvert, but they've approached me and asked me about that and talked to me about that, and I was very pleased to hear that they kind of could sense that in me, and you know, we share that together, and I certainly love to hear from you guys about, you know, your personalities, your histories, your background, because that's how we all learn, is from hearing everyone else's experiences. So let me know about your introversion or extroversion. Do you have a particular experience that might be illustrative of your personality type? Let me know in the comments section below. And don't forget to rate and share this video if you liked it, and subscribe to the Grauwelt channel. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye. I mean, I can only speak from my personal experience as being what I would classify chiefly as an introvert, and I don't think that's ever going to Sorry, I'm going to do that again. I can only speak from my personal experience as what I would describe as chiefly an introvert, and I don't think that's ever going to weigh... Damn it, I'm going to do that one more time. I can only speak from my personal experience as what I would describe chiefly as an introvert, and I don't think that's ever going to go away.